Hello and welcome to this demonstration of the Butoba MT-5 reel-to-reel battery-operated tape recorder. The Butoba MT-5, as seen in this picture, was a battery-operated tape recorder that was marketed by the Butoba company of Germany. This model was introduced in 1960 and was the successor of a model that was virtually identical with a brown casing, which was introduced in 1959. And those two machines together could be said to be really the first available home recording tape recorders for battery operation. Until then, home tape recorders had been solely mains operated, with battery operated recorders being available for professional use, but at a corresponding price tag and not intended for the average home user. Admittedly, the Butobas were fairly pricey because of their special battery-operated feature, but they were still within reach of the home user. However, they might not have taken the home user market by storm, because at that point people were not really that interested in running around with a tape recorder on their shoulders. However, it did create quite a bit of a stir within the reporting areas, and also when it comes to language studies, people traveling around the world recording sounds, recording voices from indigenous peoples, and this being actually a fairly affordable recorder for that type of use. The design is very simple. It doesn't really have any special features, but nevertheless it's quite an elegant design. There's a lid here with a see-through plastic lid or window, as you can see, which means that the tape is actually protected, yet you can still see it and you can still get at the controls. So it's quite an intelligent design, and that was mirrored on later machines from other manufacturers, which also had this lid that didn't actually cover the whole machine, but only the tape. The lid comes off and can be removed completely like this. And that gives us the two reel holders here. There's a tape counter, which basically is a clock mechanism that's driven by the left-hand reel carrier here, so it doesn't actually measure time, it just basically counts the number of revolutions this does with some sort of a scale factor. There's the tape cover head with this beautiful Butoba logo. Speed selector, there are two speeds, 1 7/8 and 3 3/4 inches. 3 3/4 of an inch per second. Then we have the control panel here. Very simple. There's a stop button in the middle, fast wind left and right, playback here to the very right, and record to the very left. There's a pause button, which also functions as a start button for the machine, and a volume control and a tone control. This machine was manufactured in fairly large numbers, probably well over 10,000 machines. This one has a fairly high serial number, and on the early machines, these volume and tone labels were not present. They were introduced for some reason very late in the production of this machine. Finally, there are some inputs. There's a connection here for connecting to an external amplifier, for recording and playback, and there's a microphone input here on the left. On the back, we find a battery box, removable. Normally there's a screw here which is tightened. I've loosened it now to make it easy to remove. It fits 8 D-cell batteries, which gives two groups of 6 volts to power, one group to power the motors and one group to power the amplifier. This machine has seen fair bit of use. There are a few cracks here and there, and there's also an extra retrofitted power supply input here for connecting to an external power supply. Normally, the machine would have been, if not delivered, at least available as an option, would have been a power supply that you plugged in here instead of the battery box. Now this machine has got an external power supply which someone has built. It looks a bit like a homegrown offer, but the actual design inside and the modifications inside the recorder are actually fairly professional. Looking at the style of the casing, should think it would probably have been built sometime in the mid-70s or something, especially since there's a light-emitting diode. They weren't popular and common until that date. Finally, the loudspeaker on this unit is actually on the underneath here. There's a speaker grill, and the loudspeaker is actually mounted here. And there are a couple of extra holes here at the front of the recorder underneath this vinyl covering, and that's where the sound comes through when the machine is placed this way up. An alternative way of operating the machine would have been on its back, like this. And that is actually the preferred position when you're carrying it. So you can get at the controls, and there'd be a strap connected here. And then you'd have the best fidelity because you'd have the speaker facing straight backwards. So we're going to put this machine through its paces. We're going to put on a tape. Threading of the machine is just like any standard reel-to-reel. Put a full reel on the left, empty reel on the right. We have to plug in the power supply, or we won't get very far. Here we go. There. And then we'll fast wind. This machine is unusual in that it has two motors. There's one motor mounted here in the center, which is used for fast wind, and then there's one motor which powers the flywheel and the right-hand reel when it is playing back or recording. Now if we press the playback button, nothing much happens except the reels start spinning slightly uncontrollably because the pinch roller is not yet engaged. Now when we move the pause button to the left and then we clear it, then the machine starts playing normally. The reason for that is so that the machine can be brought up to speed before starting. Otherwise, you get a slurred start. Now, unfortunately, the tension on the right hand drive clutch seems slightly high, so that it tends to spin uncontrollably until released, until the pause button has been released. Volume is fairly good. Fast wind, slightly hesitant. The wind motors in these machines tend to be fairly weak. And remember that battery-operated or DC motors, small DC motors, were not commonplace in the 1950s, which is one of the reasons that battery-operated machines like this were not very common until that time. The Butoba company, incidentally, had marketed battery-operated machines since the early 1950s, or early to mid-1950s, but they used clockwork motors instead of battery-operated motors, simply because, mainly because battery-operated or DC motors were not common in those days, mainly due to the fact that strong permanent magnets weren't devised for popular use until the mid-50s. Now, we're going to make a slight recording. I'm going to use a different tape for that I use for recording. And we're going to wind into the tape a bit. This is, incidentally, a 2-track recorder, 2-track mono, so you've got one track on each side of the tape, which means there's not you don't have any track select or anything like that. It's basically just mono. Now I've got a microphone here, which is not the original microphone for this recorder, but it's of a similar vintage and type that would have been used. So we plug this in here, put it on the floor quite simply, and we'll put the machine in record mode. And I'm going to hold the reel here so it doesn't spin away. As you can see, this magic eye here lights up. Maybe you can see it in the video. It's a very simple indicator tube. It is actually a thermiotic tube, not a meter or anything. And as I speak, you see this green line getting smaller and smaller. When it's completely extinguished, that means the level is too high. So this is probably a fairly good level to record at. And we'll let the tape run, like this, and make a very brief recording before winding the tape back and listening to it. So stop, rewind, let it wind the tape back, and then start it from here. And let it play back. Tape run like this, and make a very brief recording before winding the tape back and listening. Now, changing the tape speed causes the recording the speed to change directly, of course. And that's basically the functionality of the machine. The connectors here, it's a German machine, hence the proliferation of DIN connectors, one on each side here. So that's about it. the Butoba MT-5 reel-to-reel recorder from the early 60s. And it's been a pleasure to actually finally make this video, this fairly unusual machine that still did capture at least part of the world by storm. Okay, thank you for watching, and goodbye.